Thank you to ULI Asia Pacific for the opportunity to talk to you today about COVID-19, the rise of the blended city, and the future of real estate. The starting point for our conversation is this. In 2020, we entered the fifth decade of the century of cities. From 1980 to 2080, the world's population is moving from roughly 40% of 6.5 billion people living in cities to 80% of 9.5 billion people living in cities. A huge human trek towards the urban form. That trek towards our cities is accompanied by the rise in our concern about planetary health, the climate emergency, and also the fourth industrial revolution, bringing forward many new digital technologies and indeed other sciences, providing us with a new wealth of data to manage, to understand, and to produce our new economies and our social interactions. One of the effects of the century of the city is that we're much more aware now of the difference between good urbanization and bad urbanization. Bad urbanization, when the growth of the population or the number of jobs in a city outstrips the carrying capacity of that city in terms of its infrastructure, its built environment, and the flows of people that it can accommodate, leading to inflation, congestion, pollution, segregation, and many other associated features of bad urbanization. Good urbanization, well-planned cities, multi-centered, high-capacity transport systems, increasing productivity, supporting social mobility, and improving environmental sustainability as we go. COVID-19 has arrived just at the moment when our cities were beginning to take on a much more distributed pattern. Not 3 or 4 or 5 cities being the global leaders as in the early decades of the century of the city, but over the last 2 decades, 100 significant cities emerging as centers of commerce, trade, innovation, creativity, playing roles as gateways to national economies or as innovation centers for new industries. So this more distributed urbanization was leading to cities that are not just single-centered, but multiple-centered, and also regions which function as networks of whole cities, as in the Yangtze River Delta or the Northeast Corridor in the USA. These ideas about distributed urbanization are being rapidly accelerated by COVID-19, as we shall see. Now, COVID-19 brings with it 6 great drivers of change that seem to me to have 2 very particular imperatives. The first driver of change is the need to renew and recalibrate supply chains and patterns of trade. COVID-19 has revealed the inadequacy of supply chains that are based primarily on efficiency and not sufficiently on resilience. At the same time, COVID-19 has also been a great accelerator of digital transformation, proving to have a massive uptick in not just virtual conferencing and flexible working, but also in distance learning, in telemedicine, in online entertainment, and of course, in online retail. This has led to a wide variety of business model changes. Many companies now adopting an as-a-service methodology, but also a massive growth in digital infrastructure, the demand for digital capability, and of course the data economy and the data populations that arise from this that enable us to make other changes. COVID-19 has also underlined, of course, major challenges in human healthcare, healthy living, and our medical systems, revealing not just inadequacies, but also inequalities in the way they work. COVID-19 has also underlined the importance of moving towards a more climate-adjusted, sustainable economy. The link between human health and planetary health has been clearly underlined by COVID-19, as we've seen people with pre-existing respiratory conditions, for example, being more prone to serious illness through COVID-19, and those people, of course, acquiring these respiratory conditions often influenced by poor air quality. This is one of the linkages. Others are to do with the animal kingdom and our food systems. And of course, through the experience of lockdown, many people have had, as it were, the accidental proof of concept that it's possible to retain relatively high levels of productivity, but at the same time to have much lower levels of carbon emission. If you like, we've proved that a high productivity, low emission economy could be possible. Now, the fifth change, of course, is about the role of national governments in citizens' lives. National governments have become much more involved in determining what citizens may do, in collecting data about citizens, and in requiring them, as it were, to be able to trace and track who they've interacted with in order to control the virus. This has led to concerns about a new authoritarianism, but it's also led to, as it were, a new equation between what citizens expect of their governments in this regard. We've also seen, and this is perhaps the sixth key theme, a new social contract emerging. People enjoying a new degree of neighborliness, higher levels of social capital, more philanthropic activity, and perhaps arising from this, the requirement for a new license to operate for businesses, and perhaps an intolerance of things like low tax regimes or low tax industries. Now, these six big themes that have been revealed by COVID-19 have led to two particular concerns. One concern is about the future of jobs and work, not just where we work and how we work, but whether rapid digitization will increasingly destroy jobs, and how can we use rapid digitization and the recovery from COVID-19 to be a job-rich recovery. And the second preoccupation has been the challenge for cities, with many people talking about the death of the city, the end of the city, the migration to the digital world in which the city is no longer necessary. I personally believe that COVID-19 might be seen as being three important things for cities. Firstly, we would argue that COVID-19 is not a white swan. It's not the kind of swan you want to see every day. Maybe it is a kind of black swan, an unintended or unexpected event that has severe repercussions and consequences that require a wholesale change in the way our systems operate. Maybe it's in fact a green swan, a swan that brings with it the opportunities to build back better, to make cities that are more climate adjusted, more sustainable, more flexible. Thirdly, perhaps COVID-19 is a blue swan, an opportunity for us to embrace technology in a new way, but use that technology to recreate and repower the city after COVID-19. Now, whatever you think about what COVID-19 is in relation to the city, my feeling is that three key ideas will underpin how it will work and how our real estate will perform as a consequence in the future. The first of these ideas is that COVID-19 is an accelerator. The second is that COVID-19 will require greater agility. And the third is that COVID-19 will produce more hybrid systems in both the way we work and in how real estate needs to behave and perform. Let's think of it this way. Prior to COVID-19, we were already enjoying this period of distributed urbanization. You can see on my chart here that we were moving from cities with single centres that were growing, as it were, through densification in the city centre, towards a much more hybrid set of urban networks where multiple centres within cities were beginning to thrive, and within regions, multiple city networks were beginning to emerge to distribute opportunities. My belief is that the combination of the physical city and the virtual world into which we've recently migrated will come together to produce a new set of hybrid cities. These are cities that take the best advantages that come from the physical attributes of the cities we know, with their cultural amenities, their transport systems, their public spaces, their work environments, and their leisure destination capabilities. And it will put those together with the new virtual city that we've been enjoying, with its high-powered digital connections, its opportunity for as-a-service business models, the flexibility it provides for how we work. And it will provide, I think, for people three very important choices. Firstly, where we live. Secondly, how we work. And thirdly, when we travel. So this blended city will produce a new set of agile real estate assets, many of which have only just been emerging over the last period, but will become mature over the next one. Now, what does this mean in terms of offices and commercial real estate? Well, I think the first thing to say is that offices have proved to be extremely resilient and indeed adaptive over time. We've had periods in the past where offices have been centralized in core CBDs, or they've been decentralized into more remote locations. They've just been through a re-centralizing moment again, and I suspect we're about to see a combination of both centralization and decentralization. It's also true to say that the demand for offices is not just about efficiency that can easily be replaced by digital working. Demand for offices is also driven by a need to create and sustain corporate culture, to provide, as it were, a sense of belonging, not just between the worker and the building, but between the worker and her or his colleagues, her or his employer. If you like, this sense of being part of a team is facilitated through the art of co-location. Offices are also important to promote innovation. It's through the casual, unexpected interactions that one has with other people in the office and the unplanned knowledge exchanges that it's possible for innovation to occur, leading to all sorts of creativity. It's also the case that offices are often the most productive places to work, especially for people who don't enjoy a high amount of private space in their homes. Many younger workers, for example, prior to settling into a home which they own or a home they might live in for a long time, have a poverty of space in the places where they live, and they need offices in order to be able to enjoy a productive work environment. So there seem to be lots of reasons why offices will continue to be in demand in the future in the blended city. But instead of providing simply a place to work, they'll be adjusted, of course, to the new public health, the new human health environment. There'll be a strong focus on wellness and how to blend the work activity with other kinds of healthy activity. There'll be offices that are kitted out to be much more agile, to be able to provide different kinds of facilities on different days of the week and different times of day. And there'll be environments which are more social. There'll be environments where, as it were, the employing organization can create, sustain, and communicate their brand, and the workers can have the opportunity to enjoy the brand and to contribute to its growth and its development. Now, my observation would also be that I think we'll see some very significant variations in the way the office of the future emerges. And I think those variations will include regional variations, which will be according to the degree of urbanization that's already been achieved. In Asia Pacific, in Greater China, and elsewhere, I expect to see the return to the office being very substantial. In North America, perhaps we will see fewer people returning to the office and many more people working permanently in a digital form, as well as seeing in all markets a different kind of blend or mix or hybridity between physical working and digital working. In Europe, I expect to see more people returning to the offices, but also the offices returning to the people, with many more working spaces being created closer to where people live, perhaps creating an opportunity to renew and to re-establish suburban locations, smaller towns and high streets. So all of this, I think, will see much more office space being made more agile and adaptive, and it will exist in the core CBDs as well as in the second and third districts within the established cities, and also in smaller cities and towns. Overall, I think the office is not dead. But what will be key in all of this is that there will also be sector variations. Different sectors will have different propensities to require office space, and they'll require it in different kinds of formats. Sectors that are innovation rich will of course go for spaces that are much better at incubation. Sectors that are regulation rich will want to have offices that control the flow of information and are able to separate different information groups from one another. Sectors that are much more about customer service and face-to-face activities will create spaces that enable that to occur. So we should expect to see regional variations and sector variations, as well as variations that are unique to specific locations, such as locations that already have a built environment that's all very well established. So as well as this more distributed form of office space, we're also going to see, I think, a very important accent on quality of location, quality of place, quality of urban design, and quality of buildings, as the offices will have to serve not just the productivity requirements, but also, of course, the human health and safety requirements. This is where new technologies are going to aid us substantially. Risk adjusting those offices towards the new healthcare risks will be a key function of digital technologies, and we should see a very quick upsurge in the way our BIM and other systems work. So overall, we expect to see high quality in offices based on technology, design, management, sense of purpose, and the vision around what the office is for. Now, that next generation of technology in real estate is going to be a very important function, not just for offices, but for all of the other kinds of buildings that we use. And if you think about single-purpose real estate, not just office buildings, but hotels, universities, retail malls, convention centers, and sports stadia, all of these single-purpose buildings are increasingly going to want to embrace not just this hybrid, agile, distributed model that I've described, but also using new technologies to guarantee safety, to improve human flow and productivity, to make these buildings attractive so that talented people want to work within them, to ration space appropriately, and to sequence and ration the different times at which the buildings are used, and the infrastructures within the buildings, including all sorts of functions to move people around. These kinds of buildings will be much better to serve our new economy models. The sharing economy, the circular economy, the experience economy, the platform economy will all want buildings that are intelligent, data-rich, driven by this desire to combine great design with great efficiency. I don't know whether the co-working model in the way that we've seen it so far will survive, but it will only survive if it's able to embrace the key challenge of our time, which is human health. So we could say, in thinking about this, that we have multiple challenges in our real estate system after COVID-19. Offices will need to adjust, and these other single-use functions of retail, of education, administration, sports, conventions, and others will be on a rapid and accelerated journey towards agility and to reconfiguration. At the same time, we may expect to see a growth in other kinds of real estate assets in our blended city. Clearly, this will be digital infrastructure, data centers, and other things that serve the digitization process. We will see a massive growth, it seems to me, in logistics and the reorientation and relocation of that logistics into our city centers, forming a last mile fulfillment function, which is a part of our local distribution processes. We will see the regrowth of modern manufacturing within our cities with 3D printing and publishing facilities, as well as, of course, the growth of storage and other kinds of lifestyle assets in our real estate. We will, of course, see all of this being combined in new kinds of mixes and blends that will enable our cities to combine and offer new things, not just to mobile workers and to investors, but configurations that allow us to create great places to live, safe places to work, and exciting places to visit. So as we move through our COVID-19 crisis, it's not the end of our city, or is it the end of our real estate system that exists within cities? We're moving towards a more distributed kind of urbanization with greater agility and more hybridity, a blended city that provides a new context in which real estate can flourish, can succeed, and can ultimately become sustainable.